All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies class, I've been going through a series of video presentations I'm creating based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm in the Structuring the Web with HTML, and I'm, as you can see, in the Multimedia and Embedding portion of this. And we're about to talk about from object to iframe and other embedding technologies. So, as it says, by now you should be getting the hang of embedding things into your web pages. At this point, we'd like to take a sideways step, looking at some elements that allow you to embed a wide variety of content types, including iframe, embed, and object elements. Iframes are for embedding other web pages, and the other two allow you to embed PDF files, SVG, which are scalable vector graphics, and even Flash, a technology on its way out, but which you'll still see occasionally. All right. So, as mentioned here on the top, a long time ago on the web, it was popular to use frames to create websites. What's a frame? Well, to be honest with you, it's not exactly, but almost what we have here are frames. And what I mean is with a frame, on the left-hand side, you've got links, and if you click a link, it'll show you content on the right-hand side. Now, I remember when I first, not when I first, but years ago when I was teaching this stuff, and one of the assignments I would give people, because we were using frames at the time, was over here. We built a children's coloring book. And over here we had all the letters from A to Z. So you click over here on the A, and over here it might show you a picture of an alligator that you could go and then color, type of thing. All right, now hopefully that makes at least a little bit of sense to you. All right. When we use these, as it says, they were embedded in a master document called a frame set, which allowed you to specify the area on the screen in which each frame filled. All right. And as it says, this was considered to be really cool in the 90s. But later, in the late 90s and early 2000s, other technologies became popular. Java applets and Flash were a couple more that you could use. You embedded these technologies by using object and embed tags. Finally, as it says, the iframe element appeared, along with other ways of embedding content. All right, like using Canvas and some of this other stuff we will hit on in later lessons. Okay? All right. So it says in this article, we're going to jump straight in to an active learning session to give you an example. It says the online world is familiar with YouTube. Well, guess what? This is very similar to what we just did. It says go to YouTube and find a video you like. Click the share button, select the embed, copy it, and insert it into the input box below. That's exactly what we just did. It says for bonus points, you can also go out and try to embed a Google map. That's just another thing that can be done. All right. Totally fine. All right. Let's spend a couple minutes and talk about iframes. All right. So it says, so that was easy and fun, right? Iframe elements are designed to allow you to embed other web documents into the current document. And really, when you think about it, isn't that what we were doing? Well, I guess we took it out, but when we put in and we embedded that trip to the arch in here, all right, we were embedding a YouTube document, which is another document. Okay, it's a video, not really a document, but we were embedding it into our web page. As it says, this is a great opportunity for incorporating third-party content into your site. Okay. There are serious security concerns with using iframes. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't use them. It just means that you should be careful when you do use them. Why would there be security concerns? Okay, well, quite often when there are security concerns, All right, what you don't want is you don't want users to be able to go in and manipulate what is being shown on the screen at any one time. So if I right mouse click on here and open this in a new tab, as it says, browser makers and web developers have learned the hard way that iframes are a common target for attacks from hackers. All right, so people who are going in and trying to modify a web page. Okay, let's see. So what are they saying here? Only embed when necessary. I mean, do you have to, is it mandatory that you embed a page that you have virtually no control over into your website? That's something only you can answer. If you are going to do it, as they mention here, use HTTPS, which is the encrypted version of HTTP. It means it uses the secure socket layer. All right, it reduces the chance that remote content will be tampered, and it prevents embedded content from accessing content in the parent document. All right, always use the sandbox attribute. It says you want to give attackers as little power as you can to manipulate or potentially manipulate your website. All right. As it says, this applies to your own content too. A container for code where it can be used appropriately for testing is known as a sandbox. Now, just to give you an example of where you might want to use a sandbox. Let's suppose this has nothing to do with video and audio, but let's suppose for a second that you are creating your own e-commerce site, where you're going to eventually sell things. All right. Well, you might want to set up a sandbox while you're testing to make sure that your site is handling incoming transactions appropriately. So if somebody wants to come in and they want to buy something from your site, can they do so? And in other words, all right, let's say that you want to let them use PayPal. Well, PayPal has a sandbox where you can practice using PayPal and put in fictitious numbers, etc., to see, where they're not real transactions, but they're simulating real transactions. That's what a sandbox is designed to do. All right. Okay. Let's see the embed and objects. It says they serve a different function to the iframe. These are general purpose embedding tools to embed things, typically not like audio and video, but things like PDF files, etc. All right, I think that's enough from this. So some of the stuff that you can put in here, notice, allow full screen. If set, the iframe can be put in full screen mode. Frame border, if set to 1, it tells the browser to draw a border between this frame and the other frames. 0 means no border. Source, we've already talked about. Height and width, we've already talked about. Fallback content, we've already talked about. And I just mentioned sandbox. All right, so they go a little bit more into security right here. And again, the thing is, when we are talking security, no site is 100% secure. At the college I used to work at in Wisconsin, I had a friend, Doug. Still have a friend, Doug. But Doug taught in our security program. And I remember sitting in a classroom once, I was working in there, and Doug was giving a lecture. And he was a very entertaining person to listen to and very knowledgeable. And somebody raised their hand and said, Mr. T, I got a question for you. I just bought a new computer, and I want to make sure it's 100% secure. What can I do? And he looked at her and said, don't turn it on. And she said, well, that would kind of go against why I bought the computer. He said, fine, if you're going to turn it on, don't ever use the internet. And she said, well, that's kind of why I bought it. He goes, fine. Then your computer can never be 100% secure, because there are people out there trying to do malicious things all the time. As it says in the second paragraph down, browser makers and web developers have learned the hard way that iframes are a common target for people who are hackers. also known as crackers, to attack if they're trying to maliciously modify your web page or trick people into doing something they shouldn't do. You see these commercials and stuff on TV all the time. All right. So again, only embed when necessary. We already mentioned that. Use HTTPS. We've already mentioned that. All right, so this is the same stuff we've already gone through. I mentioned the sandbox stuff to you. Okay, so let's jump down then to the embed and object elements. It says these elements again are general purpose embedding tools which include plugin technologies. A plugin, as it says, refers to software that cannot read natively. In other words, if there's probably at least a chance that whatever the software is won't already be loaded on your computer. So in order to be able to actually get the full effect of this, you might be told that you've got to download some software in order to be able to use a certain plugin. It's a good news, bad news type of situation, because when you ask somebody to download a plugin, they're able to do something that they couldn't otherwise do. It's the good news. The bad news is some of these plugins can have security hazards. And all of this stuff is mentioned in here. Again, what I'm going through right now is meant to be more of a high-level overview of what's going on in here. All right? All right. So we have now hit on the first three. Images and HTML, video and audio content from object to iframes. So next, onward and upward, we will go into vector graphics on the web. And please remember a couple things. Number one, nobody knows everything. I mean, I know people who work at this institution who know a lot more than I do. Part of knowing this stuff is not so much knowing it, but it's when you have a question, it's knowing where to look for something. So no one knows everything. Don't try to learn everything, but try to become a master of knowing where to look for things when you don't know things. Typically, if a student asks me a question and I don't know the answer, my response will be something along the lines of, gee, I don't know, but I'll try to find out. Okay, so we will come back and talk about vector graphics in just a couple minutes.